doing? Very sad looking seating area over here. Everyone's opted for the bleachers. If anyone gets uncomfortable, there's comfortable seats down here that may come in handy at some point. But welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about my new favorite subject, which is AI and its influence on search. With me, I'm joined by JT, John Terrana, Chief Media Officer of VaynerMedia and President of the Americas, and Ryan, I don't want to say it wrong, tell me how I say it right to be sure. Ryan Kangisser, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for MediaSense, and we're going to be nerding out and talking about AI search. To begin with, I'm just going to talk through a few slides. So we produced a report about AI and its impact on search recently. The full report is available at VaynerMedia.com/reports. Got to plug that. So if anyone wants the full report, that's where you can find it. But just a few slides to kind of set the groundwork and sort of really ground us in where we are and why this is such a big deal. Ultimately, it is, as this slide suggests, one of the biggest shifts that's happened in recent history since the emergence of the internet, the emergence of things like social media. I think this is a change that's in that sort of scale and that sort of level of relevance, and it's a really important thing. But we're at the very beginning of that change, so I think there's a huge opportunity for the brands that can move quickly and adapt to this new world, and to really emphasize how quickly this is shifting and changing. This shows relatively across different platforms and things like the internet and mobile phones, the time that those various things took to get to 100 million users. So mobile phones all the way at the bottom took about 16 years. TikTok, I think, took about 9 months. ChatGPT took only 2 months to reach 100 million users, and the growth rate is still sort of hockey sticking upwards. So I think just that really highlights how pervasive and how quickly this technology became pervasive. And obviously ChatGPT is the leader, but there's a lot of other players in the space as well. Currently, this is roughly what we estimate. It's about close to 8% of searches are taking place on LLMs, places like ChatGPT, like Gemini. About 92.5% still taking place on what we would call traditional search, which is places like Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, whatever you're into. But as this sort of pie chart on the right shows, estimating that that's going to get to about 25% in the next 2 years. So that rate of adoption is really significant. And that's why adapting and preparing now is really important to be able to take advantage of that 25% share in the next couple of years. Like I said, lots of different players. ChatGPT is definitely in the lead in terms of sort of daily query volume, about 1.2 billion daily queries taking place on ChatGPT, but a lot of players in the space, things like Meta AI, obviously they're on a significant hiring spree at the moment. Gemini, Grok, all of these different players, all sort of competing for share in this LLM world. Where we're seeing the impact most is across things like informational searches, research-based searches. So everything from like what's the population of France would be like an informational search, or more product-led searches might be, you know, what's the best brand of noise-canceling headphones, or a research-based one might be, you know, noise-canceling headphones product reviews. Things like purchase-led searches are still predominantly taking place in a traditional search ecosystem, but I think we'll probably get to talking about some of the shifts and changes that are taking place that suggest that these LLMs are quickly going to start to steal share across these other types of searches as well. This, I think, really emphasizes a big thing that's not necessarily captured in that. This is something that's impacting the more traditional search space. So within that 92, 93% that is still taking place on Google, obviously Google now rolling out AI overviews within search results. And so that's increasing what we call zero-click searches, which is where someone searches and they just get the answer to what they're looking for within the search results, and they just close the window. And this is an example data from one of our clients, but I think we're seeing this trend across a lot of clients, where on this visual, the purple line is impressions, the blue line is clicks, and we're seeing a big divergence where even though impressions are going up, click-through rates are clearly drastically going down. And so there's a big divergence happening between impressions and clicks, and that is visualizing the rise in this zero-click search behavior, which I think is the result of those AI overviews. ways that brands can capitalize on this. There's three big areas to focus. I think one is ranking, so making sure content on websites, content across social media, various touch points across the internet are optimized so that if somebody's asking questions to these LLMs, that your brand is what's showing up in those results. Tapping into advertising opportunities, very early days here, but there's things across Google, across Bing that you can be testing and starting to get ahead of that to inform advertising strategies as these things mature. And then understanding measurement, what are the new KPIs, the new frameworks to be measuring to really understand this impact. So that's my quick spiel through the slides. Like I said, if you want the full report, VaynerMedia.com/reports. That was just a sample of some of the slides from it. But obviously we're here now to discuss, and then if anyone has any questions, we're very available to answer them. So without further ado, let's get into the fireside chat. That's quite an animated photo of me. So I guess to open it up to you both, I think first question, we'll start broad. Why is this a very significant change, and how significant, I guess, do you think it is?
Okay, that's better. Look, I think it's very clear that this is different to a lot of the other trends that we've seen over the last 2 decades, and some of us have had the privilege of seeing what is often a distraction with noise over signal. I think we were talking before about voice search or visual search, which we were sucked up at the time around these big claims about 50% of searches being voiced by 2020, and it never really happened. I think the difference now is we're all using it. We can really relate to the shift that's happening, and I think you relate both as a consumer but also as a marketer. Google will generate $200 billion a year. We know that they're 90% of searches. They're 55% of the UK ad market, as an example. And with the rise in those zero searches, it's very clear that there's a pretty seismic shift in where those ad dollars are going to be flowing to, but also the impact that advertisers are able to achieve through traditional pay channels. So I think for me, the real shift is just we are seeing this playing out every day. We're seeing it on our LinkedIn feeds. We're seeing it in all the conversations we're having, and just what seems to be a much more heightened shift in just the narrative in the industry. And as we'll talk about, I think it's also much more than just search. And maybe I'll kind of pause before we get into that. Hand over to JT.
Yeah, I think my comp for what's happening now in search is like Facebook 2014, 2015, 2016, when feed-based, and in particular feed-based user behavior and advertising on mobile took off, right? Like that was such an incredible shift, disrupted desktop behavior in such a huge way, changed the way we literally access the internet, like on hours and hours a day. And I think the comp to what we're at the very beginning of in search is actually pretty similar. And that's like a pretty seismic shift if you think about it. I think for the first time in 2 decades, or maybe 15 years, Google search is less than 90% share. And you're talking about the best and most perfect business potentially ever created, like being disrupted. So like that's like pretty big tectonic shifts moving. I think the interesting thing about the moment we're in is if you ask any marketer or brand, if they had a redo in 2015 or 2016, they would have told you like, shit, I would have spent all my money on Facebook. I would have spent all my time mastering mobile, because that's where the space was going. I think similarly, if you asked any brand or marketer, do you think you should have spent more on TikTok in 2020 or 2021, or more time there building a vertical video muscle, they would have been like, hell yeah. Like that's where the whole space was going. So I think it's sort of like an interesting moment now to be like, we're at the very, very beginning stages of AI-based search. And it's like the brands that lean in and sort of, I think, learn from the shifts of the past, 12, 15 or so years. That's an exciting time for them, and it's a little bit of like a huge legacy business is going to look totally different in the next 3, 4, 5 years. That should create a whole bunch of opportunity for folks.
I think that was going to be my next question. I think there's there's two sides of the coin and two types of people I would say I've spoken to. One group is the kind of pessimistic, I'm worried, this feels like it's going to destroy the business that I've built, or it's going to really disrupt things in a way I'm not sure I'm going to be able to cope with. And then others who are excited by this new opportunity. So I guess, where do you sit on that spectrum? And I guess, how would you skew someone towards the excitement version of that versus the pessimistic, scared version?
Look, I think it depends on the category in which you're in. I think clearly in the D2C space, which has been, you know, very much indexed towards performance marketing over the last few years, very reliant on those performance channels. It drives budgeting. You know, it's that kind of cost of sale model, and it's very tangible, being able to deliver clicks and outcomes, and critically measure in that very traditional last click linear way. So I think for those brands, understandably, they are nervous about what the future is going to look like, what that future budget profile, and where the performance is going to go. What's exciting is, of course, the ability to learn about how consumers are searching and discovering your brands. I don't think there's a single brand that is not, should not be understanding how AI search is going to change the relationship they have with their consumers, and that's why it is so much more than search. It drives the content obviously you produce on your website, through your products, your customer relationships, because all of that is now going to be informing the way that the engines are going to respond to consumers. And you're seeing already a shift in how product descriptions are being developed according to how people are searching for brands. And so take a few examples. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. You take something like property searches. The fields that you're presented with are just very typical, size, location. But imagine if you're starting to search with more niche requirements, and that will start to transform the whole user experience within those types of businesses. So, as I say, I think there are some categories where it's more acute, it's more urgent. In others, it presents a massive opportunity, and now's the time to be learning, discovering, as opposed to panicking and being too flippant in one's response.
I totally agree with all that. I don't know if it matters if you're excited or not. It's happening. Like there's it is 100% not in or if you're panicked or not. Like it's happening. Like I try to think about through the lens of categories or industries. And I think about what's happening to like online travel agencies, like the Booking.coms and the Expedias and folks like that. Like we don't work with any of those folks, but a lot of times those online travel agencies, they spend billions and billions of dollars on classic sort of Google blue link search. They are a search platform themselves, and they have a ton of information and content that can be fed into LLMs. If you look at the way they're behaving, they will continue to be the masters of the classic search game, but they are almost all leaning in as aggressively as possibly you can to saying, how can we feed what we know about travel habits into LLMs and show up in a different way in Perplexity and ChatGPT? So I think that those most sophisticated search players are like a good sort of leading indicator or beacon for the industry, where they will continue to do performance blue link based search, get really quick bookings, but feed what they know, really, really great content into LLMs, and then, follow consumer behavior over time. So you really don't have a choice but to do both, and that's just the reality of it. And it's sometimes hard to like disrupt yourself. I think that's the point, right? Where if I have to the T, my keywords, my bid strategies, my ROI, my ROAS, disrupting yourself and saying, I have to train my own brain and behavior to not be like so beholden to that and think differently is the actual like hard behavior change.
Yeah, makes complete sense. I think knowing you both spend a lot of time talking, senior marketing leaders across brands, what are kind of some of the big questions they're asking? Where are their heads at? What are they concerned about? What are they excited about? What are they thinking?
I mean, I think there's, again, for the reasons we're here, and there is a bit of that panic settling in. I think all the trends historically didn't you weren't getting that provocation from the top. It was almost from, you know, the practitioners. I think now very much it's this existential threat of how AI is going to disrupt or transform the business. So I'm sure some people in this room are constantly being sent examples. What are we doing? Why are we not doing this versus our competitors? I was in a session recently and the topic came up and someone said, well, let's assemble a working group. Let's make a plan. And the CMO was like, I need it yesterday. I can't, this isn't like anything else where we can go away and then come up with a recommendation. So I think the other context of this, and you know, we've spoken about this recently in the last probably 12 months, is actually the way we define media is changing fundamentally. So whereas a lot of those brands would, I guess, segment media into paid and then you've got earned and owned, this is now another example of just how blurry everything is getting. So media and content, retail and shopper, now AI search is almost at the very epicenter of that. And it will force all those different content teams, social teams, customer teams together in service of what is right for the consumer. So I think for brands, it's for sure tactically we need to do something, but also organizationally we need to be organized in a way that will allow us to operate far more intentionally in this area and not just see it as another tactical job to be done.
Yeah, I would say every CMO, CEO, brand we talk to, this is, if not the #1 priority, it's like in the top 3 things to figure out. And like I would say AI search in an interesting way, and like if you think about the world of AI, it's almost like leapfrogged like generative based creative AI tools, like in terms of like the rankings of importance of conversation we're having, because I think this is, while generative AI and creative versioning with AI will continue to be a thing, this is so squarely impacting so many brands' businesses. Like, it's empirical at this point. Like, you know, organic traffic to a lot of sites is down. And the web, and that is an incredibly important part of a lot of brands' businesses. And what do we do with that as consumer behavior shifts and changes? So the behavior change and the technicality of it is so wildly important to make sure you show up in the LLMs. I think the good news for a lot of the CMOs that we work with and brands that we talk to is like, building brand is still the #1 ultimate thing, which is the thing you can fall back on. Like, if you think about it, if I'm going to say, go to ChatGPT and say, I need new white dress shoes for a wedding, what's the best brand for me? That's very different than saying that that, hey, ChatGPT, can you show me the best deal on Cole Haan white dress shoes, right? The brands that are going to win in this new era are going to be the folks who actually build brand over time. And I think the paradox is, in a search-based environment, a lot of like search gurus and really talented search people are the least brand-oriented people. So this is like the reintroduction of like old school brand marketing into a search environment. That gets back to content creation points. So that's like the thing that I think when we talk to CMOs, we've been doing this for a while, like the most energizing part for a lot of them. They're like, oh shit, I know how to build brand. I can think about that. And then it's like, how do they also get the technicalities of it down? So it's a super interesting time where you have like all of this old school brand stuff coming in with a lot of like new school, like really technical stuff happening.
Just to build one more thing, because I think that pendulum shift from almost the brand, or I think the other one, actually an interesting one for some of the multinational brands here, is that shift from global to local. Because if you think for the last 10, 15 years, we've been reminded that 75% of all global digital spend is in Google, Amazon, Facebook. You can do it centrally. We can sit here with a credit card and buy media in 120 markets. To optimize for the LLMs in a conversational search world, where I think the statistic is the average number of keywords in a search for Google is 2 to 3. It's 11 to 12 on Perplexity. Trying to do that in, you know, across 80 languages in all those markets clearly requires a far more localized approach. So again, I think the way brands are organizing themselves to execute at scale is going to fundamentally shift as well, and we may well see that pendulum shift again back to local, which has for many been very much towards the center.
Until AI just starts translating it into 80 localized pieces someday soon. I guess if to that point around CMOs, obviously one thing that you would recommend they do is build brand, but hopefully, most good CMOs are already building somewhat of a brand. What other actionable steps would you suggest someone take today to kind of get ahead of this new trend?
I would say that the number one thing that we're 99.9% certain is going to be an evergreen strategy. And I say like 99.9 because like it's also new. Like we learn something about this every single week, every single day. But producing an absurd amount of content on the internet, on social platforms, is going to help you in these LLMs. Like that is almost guaranteed. If you think about the way LLMs function today, and you look at their top sources, I mean, it's a lot of Wikipedia, but then it's Reddit and it's a lot of YouTube, social platforms, things like that. So when we talk to a lot of our brands, we are thinking about content generation in a very, very different capacity. We are saying like, hey, like you have to actually start thinking about creating hundreds, if not thousands of YouTube videos. And like actually thousands. Like, so if you think about it, like take your entire website's FAQ section and turn every single one of those responses to an FAQ into a video. That video should live on your site. It should live on YouTube. It should live on other social channels, so on and so forth. If you are a retailer, you should be thinking about creating videos for every single product category, every single cohort you sell through, so on and so forth. All of that stuff is going to be highly, highly indexable across all the LLMs. It will also feed into social algorithms. Like the content creation game is going to go to a place where like it's going to be way, way more volume than we see today. And then like the meta point of it all is you can start to create all that content with other AI tools, right? So the production of all that content will stay high, but the cost of producing content like will stay low. And I think while we talk to like a lot of brands and like, wow, like thousands of YouTube videos, like that's going to be super costly. Like, not really. Like we can go and any brand, we could go to their FAQs on their site, and 2 or 3 of us can go upstairs to one of our editing suites and bang out FAQ videos. And we could post them on YouTube, we could post them on our sites, and I guarantee you our LLM search ranking would go up. So there's a lot of stuff to consider, but like the number one thing, an ungodly torrent of content across the internet, across social, is a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, I think so all of that. But at the same time, I think not every brand is organized to do that. So I think there is an element of applying those first principles to just why are we organized in the way we are? Why do we budget in the way that we do? You can't deny that if you take paid search as a channel, it is ring-fenced in a certain budget. It's against performance marketing. It's against paid media. Social is there. CRM is there. That's just the reality for a lot of classic matrix, big multinational brands. So I think asking those questions, why do we do what we do? Why are we organized in the way we are? Why do we spend in the way? Why do we measure in the way that we do? Has to fundamentally change to start to enable the ability to produce that content and just challenge, frankly, things that have existed or legacy behaviors that have existed for decades. And that starts with budget setting, allocation, measurement, perception of success, perception of creativity, perception of what makes the brand or what you need to spend to produce an ad campaign. I don't want to underestimate how that type of incumbency is so important for brands, and absolutely needs to shift tomorrow in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing on the content front, I would say that's an even more immediate step that people can take is just reviewing existing content as well. So like looking at an existing YouTube channel and saying, is this actually optimized? Are we structuring our data in the right way? Do we have a transcript of this video that an LLM can read? All of those things I think is like a very immediate step. And then to all those other points, I think getting into a lot of those shifts very quickly.
Like it's also going to force, it's good. It's also going to force media people and search buyers to actually begin to like blend into creative lanes in ways they haven't. Like you can look at almost every paid search campaign we run, and empirically, your cost per click is up, right? They're more high value clicks, but because AI overviews are showing up more, people are clicking less, the remaining clicks are becoming more expensive, and then it becomes a math equation to say, are they converting at a higher frequency, so on and so forth, right? The interesting thing about it is that at some point, with clicks getting more expensive, you're going to reach diminishing returns. It's going to be incumbent on media folks to say, hey, it's actually a better strategy for us to spend less, which, like, I'm a media character, which is a weird thing to say, spend a little bit less and take that little bit less and put it towards content creation that will actually help our organic rank and AI overviews or our showing up in LLMs. So it's like, it's going to be like this weird sort of blurring of media creative that's going to be like creating hybrids in like the world of brands and agencies. That like those folks who can like do that math equation and like unlock the dollars for more content, I think they're going to be like the sharpest folks and win in a bigger way.
Agreed. I think another interesting topic is I think we looked at the fact, it's mostly things like people searching for information and doing research is where we're seeing a lot of the current search behavior happening on LLMs. But fairly recently, ChatGPT and Perplexity have sort of created an avenue where brands can upload their product feed. And I think it's a very clear step towards shopping starting to be an avenue that these LLMs are going to start to compete for and start to steal click share for. So I guess, how do you think that's going to evolve in the next couple of years, and like how should brands be thinking about and preparing for that shift?
Yeah, again, I think it's going to depend on where on the platform. I think we all saw I'm sure some of you saw the announcement yesterday from Google on their how they're going to start to allow for paid advertising in their AI mode. And I think that the interesting thing there is just how contingent that's going to be on whether it's Performance Plus, Advantage Plus, PMax and Advantage Plus, whether that becomes a contingency that in order to access it, you need to be leaving it to their algorithms. Of course, with ChatGPT, others, I mean, there's a paid for model. There's something like 20 million paid users now on ChatGPT. So arguably, they won't be searching for that paper performance model in the same way that Google will. But every one of those platforms is going to be desperate to create the best experience for consumers. It's not great at the moment. I'm sure when you've tried to do those product searches, it's not really curated. It's not, again, as seamless as it invariably will be. But that's these are things that are going to happen in weeks, not years. So I think going back to almost where retail media started, you need a separate strategy for each platform. Just like search, maybe 15, 20 years ago, separate strategy for each platform. I think this is just no different, really, and it's in everyone's I think the mics, oh no, there we are, we're back. Just the best experience to obviously get that right now as we're trying to, the chart you showed earlier, just the relative share of these platforms, that Google monopoly is clearly, the highest it's ever going to be, and now it's really for others to try and win their own respective share.
Plus one to all of that. I would try to go back and learn from previous platform behavior. I think about like when dynamic product ads first became a thing on Meta. The folks who went all in and integrated 10 out of 10 and did it brilliantly made a shitload of money. And then everyone else caught up over the next 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, like DPA, dynamic product ads, becomes table stakes. And like, it's still good, but it wasn't like as good as it was in the early days. Like, I think we're going to see a little bit of that behavior on the Perplexities, on the ChatGPTs. And there's going to be a moment for the folks who like really go all in, integrate aggressively, where they're going to win in like a big way. Like, what we do know for sure is that it's all going to be monetized. And I think about, if I'm using voice-based search on, we were talking about this earlier, like on ChatGPT, and I say, hey, what's something you buy on like a recurring basis? Hey, ChatGPT, set up a recurring order of 8 rolls of toilet paper on a monthly basis. How much are brands willing to pay to be the toilet paper ChatGPT recommends? A lot of money. like a lot of money, because that's a recurring monthly order, right? Like, so you think about the monetization of those types of AI and search-based queries, like that's going to be a whole huge battlefield. I think that integrating now and making sure you show up in the early days is going to, one, like siphon all that early behavior before they really start to monetize like those types of queries and searches. And that's going to be like a huge first mover advantage for folks.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it's clearly going to go, is agents going and doing your shopping for you, which is obviously where brand becomes so critical.
Yeah, I think again, there's a bit of a, it depends on the brand itself and the equity they have. I guess this is just classic SEO, but the reality is a lot of the results are still coming from Reddit and alike. So I think there's a, going to be a big focus to, and I hope it's done in an authentic way, not just people contriving their own reviews on platforms like that. But right now, really understanding where the results are coming from and just ensuring that, sure, they may come from the product pages that get uploaded, but they also need to come from some of those other platforms which have had a first mover, if you like, in getting indexed more than others.
That's actually such an interesting point, and one I haven't really considered before you just said that. But I feel like SEO as an industry has been, there's what's called black hat SEO, which is kind of the slightly dodgy techniques. I guess, how do you think that might evolve? I think there could be a world where there's certain hacks. Obviously, they never last because they get found out and then the businesses tank that have been relying on them. But how do you think that might influence the space versus more, I guess, ethical ways of ranking in these engines?
Well, I mean, black hat almost went away because they got found out. Brands got blacklisted and delisted. We don't know what, how ChatGPT and others are gonna do the same. I think what is very clear right now is, if you're not on Reddit, you're not gonna necessarily feature. So there will be certainly right now, and there's a bunch of agencies out there that are profess to be GEA and be able to permeate the engines more than others. Again, it's a wait and see, and it was always very tangible on paid search. If you got delisted, you just double down on paid. You don't have the same luxury now.
Yeah, like it's the hacks will be codified. To your point, like the hacks can be codified. Like I think about like the early days of DTC, like when like the really big DTC players first figured it out, they're like, oh, we need a micro blogging strategy. Like if you think about like Casper and like the mattress space, like the DTC mattress space, like all of those guys created 1,000 different sites, hey, sleepadvice.com, whatever it may be, like thousands and thousands of them, just to show up in SEO and siphon internet traffic back to their DTC site. Like that happens. And that happens over and over and over again. Like that's going to happen with, AI-based search. We're just going to like learn our way into those things. So it's like when we talk to big brands, we often talk to them about like, if you think about like Temu and Shein and like some like the really big DTC players who are like incredibly advanced, like those two brands are actually like Google and Meta's two largest clients. Like you should always be looking to get inspiration from those folks of how to win in these places. A lot of times big brands are like, oh, that's not relevant to me. But like, this is a moment where like you could actually learn from like some of the first mover behavior from some of the digitally native brands. It's gonna be interesting to like observe the way they sort of hack it.
How should brands be thinking about measurement in this space? Like, how can I know if I'm successful or not? What are the ways to understand and to sort of assess what the impact is and whether I'm having success or not in this new world?
Yeah, it's like back to your lines. Can you pull up the lines? Can we do that?
The different query types?
Yeah, like the two lines that were diverging. Got the lines?
There we go.
Yeah, this one. So I almost kind of set up in point. This wasn't planned. All right. So imagine, I think what you want to see, as everyone's following this, is this, what is it? The purple line here is search impressions on Google. So AI overviews. How many times am I showing up in the AI overview on Google? That will be fed by like content, whether it's Reddit or YouTube, so on and so forth. This blue line is organic click-based search. One, the way we should think about it is like we want overall holistically this to go up. We want to show up more organically, and we want our click plus organic AI overview volume collectively to be bigger. The brands that do it really well, this blue line is going to be flat, while this purple line goes up. The brands whose businesses are going to be in trouble, the purple line is going to be flat, while the traffic to their site goes down. All right, so like that's basically like the simplest like overall share of search math equation you can think of. Like, so if you have declining search traffic to your DTC site, and while you're kind of like maintaining AI overviews, like that's a signal that you really got to change your behavior. You really have to change your content creation. So like it's just going to be a new muscle where all of a sudden you're going to look at your share of search as impression and click based, and that like for search people is a totally new muscle. You know, like impressions in search, like who gives a shit about those historically, right? So like that overall share is going to be like the shift I think we have to make from like a measurement standpoint.
Yeah, I think the reality is we're almost entering the biggest like incrementality test you could ever do. Just given the shift that's happening, and not to overplay that organizational point, but it's so important that, you know, so often measurement today is siloed into the different channels, and you take you know, even with AI browsers, it's more than just AI search. It's you know, you bring the whole retail experience into it, where people are just conducting their behavior and taking their different cues from all sorts of different areas. So I'm really excited about the opportunities for measurement, because we finally get to move away from the last click and that type of model that has so you know, been such a reductive approach to measurement, and almost reinforce those silos that exist. And now, rather than talking about creative effectiveness and media effectiveness, it's just effectiveness and the opportunity to actually almost curate and customize approaches to measurement, rather than just taking, you know, using methodologies that have existed for decades and just help to reinforce the bias that exists.
To the point of media effectiveness specifically, how can, if someone works in paid search, for example, what should they be doing now to kind of adapt and to, I guess, future-proof themselves for this new AI-led world of search?
Well, for one, they need to rebrand themselves. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's ironic because we've been talking about total search for some time, and that was always paid, organic, retail. But you know, I think this is more than just those tactics. It's a complete mindset shift, and it's a good thing, because we want to build careers in this industry that are not just in their various specialties, but start to be a more transversal marketer, given the role that they play. So, if I were working in paid search, I'd be walking over and talking to my content team, my CRM team, my brand team, the measurement team, to try and understand how they can be a better partner and a more integrated partner, to move paid search out of this silo into a more central part of the wider mix. The other side of it is of course how we remunerate or incentivize the management of these channels. You know, being incentivized just to spend more money on paid search will not address the need to integrate. So that, again.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's you know, as someone who bought a lot of paid search, and grew up buying ads, I just think you can no longer just be like a one skill person, to your point. Like I feel like the best search buyers are coming off like a decade plus of being like, oh, like that's the search guy. like that's the search guy. Like they are the revenue generating. Like what they do is like, you don't protect their budget. Like that's their budget. Like, you know, and there's like mystique behind the search people. I just think being a classic Google search buyer, to the point you're making, you got to know Amazon, Google. Oddly, there's like Bing is like, I haven't gone on Bing ever, but like because of Microsoft's relationship to OpenAI and ChatGPT, like Bing is sort of like potentially a leading indicator where that goes. So like you got to start studying Bing. TikTok's a search platform. YouTube, like there's no room for one skill people, like, or one channel people. And then you have to know content. Like, so if I was a search buyer to your question, I'd be like, all right, like, I kind of sort of got to flex into different lanes, because that's the only way, like, I'm going to be able to, like, stay relevant over the next decade or decade plus.
The other thing I would say that I think, just hearing your guys' answers, that I think search people are fairly unique, both organic and paid search people, is their depth of keyword research capabilities, and that being a really important skill to fuel things like, what are we going to develop content around, and really understanding where the commercial value is, where the research keywords are, and being able to feed that into content teams and things like that. Want to make sure we leave some time for some Q&A from the floor, which hopefully we'll have some questions to answer. But I guess to leave us before that Q&A, what kind of parting words of wisdom, advice, actions to take would you guys leave for people to leave with?
Test everything and go wider than wide. Like, we are in a moment where, every time I see a new piece of AI-based technology, whether it's AI search or creative tools, I'm like, holy shit, that's the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I can't believe that exists. And I'm like, I got to go all in on learning that. And then 3 days later, I see a new thing where I'm like, that made the thing from 3 days ago look like a piece of shit. Like, so it's all happening so fast and moving so fast that, like, my piece of advice I try to give to myself is, like, how much time did I spend today in the tools? How much testing did I do? And, like, am I going wider than wide in terms of, like, understanding potential new platforms, potential shifts in consumer behavior, new places to put content? And I think that's, like, the ultimate, sort of fail-safe piece of advice I can give, which is, like, just taste and try everything.
Yeah, I think don't panic. It is. I really think I saw a lovely quote about this, that this is the worst it's ever going to be. So we are kind of at ground zero, and it's great that we can all kind of learn at the same time. You can tell I work a lot on the kind of organizational side, so it's why I kind of lean into this. But I wouldn't underestimate the level of change required within brand marketing organizations in terms of how decisions are made, how teams are structured, how performance is measured. And I wouldn't just, for sure, there's all this great experimentation and testing we can do, but we need to go to the heart of, the real change is actually the cultural change, incentives driving behavior, the right behaviors. And that for some is, for D2C, it's super easy. They've only known a way. For traditional brand marketers, they are still reliant on some of those core principles and practices, and that's just going to take some time to overcome.
Love it. Thank you both. We've got a question over here straight away. Let me come with the mic.
Thanks for this discussion. It was really interesting. My question is around, do you think this kind of shift will lead to a more consolidated industry or a more fragmented industry? And do you think, like, as category leaders, they're going to become bigger? Or do you think there's going to be, like, more disruption with smaller brands, like, eating away at those category leaders' market share?
That's such a good question. I think to the second one is, I would, again, go back to history, where we were 8 to 10 years ago with, like, a lot of native DTCs popping up and challenging legacy businesses. I think we're going to see a whole new crop of them rise up. I think there's going to be really smart brands who figure out how to build their business off the backs of this consumer behavior shift, and, like, really, really understanding, like, how to win in AI-based search. Like, and there's going to be a lot more challenging happening. I think you're going to see a lot of those brands pop up, but the same thing that happened with a lot of DTCs 8, 10 years ago, there's going to be a consolidation of them. And then the biggest companies will win and evolve or acquire those brands, and the cycle's going to, like, almost, like, repeat itself, right? So I can see that happening on a brand level. Looking inward in terms of, like, to your first point of your question, I think the way we behave and structure ourselves is going to be far more consolidated, like in terms of skill sets. Like I don't see, you know, an ad agency, for example, having this concept of like departments in like 3, 4, or 5 years. Like I think about some of the folks we hired like 4 or 5 weeks ago at a college, and we like forced them to decide if they want to be media, strategy, creative. Like in 3 years, there's no way we're going to force them to like pick a department. That's like an antiquated thing, right? In order to win in this like new world, you're going to have to be able to do, at least in some semblance, all of the stuff, right? Media and creative and strategy tied together. So I think to your first question, we will like come together and be way more consolidation in roles and behavior. And then on the brand side, I think we're going to have a lot of new brands pop up, and ultimately like this consolidation cycle that tends to happen every decade or so.
This may be the first time we disagree on this panel. I don't know if if those kind of newer brands are going to be able to get the traction that they could have done, where they could just spend a bit more on paid search, or they could be a bit better on social. I think I expect that LLMs are going to index to, you know, that brand equity, the history, the heritage, the quality of the product, and obviously all the cues it takes from consumers. I think at least for the next 2 years, naturally they're going to index to that. That will invariably change. But I think I just draw my own experiences when I've run those sorts of queries on ChatGPT. I'm still searching for but have I heard of them? Do they exist? Are they legit? That type of thing. So I think it's just as everyone's playing catch up, naturally those brands that have existed have got a lot more content and equity there. I think from an agency ecosystem, it's, again, going back in history, we started at, you know, the start of the century with, you would have your SEO specialist, and then you have your paid search specialist, and you have your social specialists, and you have your retail influencer, and now we're at the kind of GEA specialist. I think brands will want to know that they're not learning by doing with their partners, and actually they have people who bring genuine expertise. But then, as history proves, they will be, you know, they will be acquired and consolidated. But I think right now, while we've got a bit of insecurity about whether we're moving faster, I suspect we're going to see a lot more of these niche providers coming in, taking that market share. But then brands will get frustrated that it's another silo and it needs to be kind of connected front and center within the rest of the ecosystem, especially given the importance of content, data measurement, and the rest of the media supply chain. So, but I think it's one thing for sure, and, you know, obviously Vayner would very much agree with this. It is a case of integrate or die. You can't continue to operate these things in isolation when they're so intrinsically linked.
Sorry. So my question is, like, you know how social was being the next search, which still is the case. So that caused like the mid funnel where you target for clicks shortening, where it was almost blurry on like retargeting strategies, which is quite measured and well, like, properly put together. But what my question is, like, till AI is sorted on measurement, on retargeting capabilities, do you think that this will further shorten the mid funnel? And if that is the case, then is social the place where like media agencies or brands should look at for more? Because the demand is going to be the same, right? Like, it's just the placement that changes.
It's a good question. The funnel is an awesome budgeting construct, like, and that's why we love it and use it. Like, when you think about like what upper, mid, and lower funnel is, like, it's mostly a construct for us to do budgeting and financial and forecasting exercise, which is very, very helpful. It's of course not the way like the actual world works, right? So that's why we love the funnel. But in practicality, it's not the way consumer behavior shifts. It is, everything's collapsing. like to your point, what's happened, like TikTok is a search platform, right? And if you look at what's happening with commerce on TikTok, TikTok shops, like it is end to end. It is one of the closest things you can compare TikTok to what Amazon has. Like it's a closed end-to-end ecosystem with killer measurement where that is the funnel collapse in a platform. I think that is what's going to happen with LLM and AI-based search, where you're going to do all of your discovery. You're going to discover new brands in it. You're going to get reviews and suggestions around it, and then you're going to convert in that same session. So the time from brand to conversion within a ChatGPT or Perplexity has the potential to be really, really short. The same way my time to conversion of searching for a new pair of shoes on TikTok, discovering a new brand and converting can be really, really short. So you're going to just continue to see platform-based ecosystems collapse the purchase journey. And then it's like, how do you plan full funnel budget activity in that environment? Like it's all going to become antiquated, right? I think you made the point of like, it's the ultimate incrementality measurement. Like there might be like 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're like, man, like remember when we talked about like ROAS? How lame was that? Like that could be dead as like a metric, right? Like just because everything's going to be just one platform-based longitudinal incrementality study, like that could be really cool. I don't know if we're going to let go of ROAS that soon and easily, but like that's a little bit the point of where I think it might go.
The only build I completely agree with that is I think you said it, our brand's going to overinvest in search. I think just generally brand marketing, they're going to have to just kind of lean into more, just to, again, build that equity, remind consumers they exist, and especially in an increasingly cluttered space.
Yeah, I did actually. Oh, okay. So I guess my question is a bit more around data regulations and cybersecurity, because I feel like with AI discoverability, it's going to be a bit more prevalent than ever. So when tomorrow we keep in mind as media buyers and planners that, oh, there are HEC restrictions in this market or that market, when we're approaching a client that's formally or like traditional with its approach towards media buying, how do you make a case for it? Or do you think that this is sort of going to integrate with one another, or it's going to be a separate topic altogether where we look at data privacy and data regulations as a separate aspect and AI privacy and regulation as a separate entity? If that made sense.
I'll try and answer that. No, look, I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to look at them separately. And again, it's, you know, we work with a bunch of pharma companies and other regulated industries, and at the moment, what the LLMs are producing. Sorry. Hello. Yeah, so as I was saying, we work with a lot of regulated industries like that, financial services, pharma, and for sure, they can't control the information that's coming back, the claims that are being made, and that obviously has big implications. So what we're seeing with those industries is just a lot of discovery and trying to understand how their information is being rendered. And I don't think regulation could come soon enough on that. But yeah, I think that on the data side, we're still navigating that space, and I think with everything, it's classic garbage in, garbage out, and I do fear generally how pervasive AI will become will be contingent on the quality of the data that's powering it, and that's, you know, more than just LLM search, but just generally AI-led planning and execution.
Yeah, a plus one all that, I would just say data, privacy, security, accuracy of information. I think if any of the LLMs could come out and say, right now, we can guarantee 100% of the information is accurate, they would. It's actually in the best interest of their business, you know? So I think if you think about they need to do it for their business, we will see more regulation inherently be adopted by the industry. Like it's a must-have for there to be consumer trust, which will lead to consumer adoption and more behavior change, right? So it's the biggest barrier right now. or the perception of that ChatGPT feeds me wrong information from Wikipedia, et cetera, like, or false information, if any of the CEOs of these companies could come out and be like, yeah, we fixed it, they would. So trust me, I would assume they're working on it in a very, very big way, because that's going to be like foundational to their business.
We've talked a lot about brand, and inherent in brand is trust. And I just wanted to pick up on your point, John, about this kind of tsunami of AI-driven content, particularly in the visual space. I just wonder if there's a kind of contrarian view where we get to the point that real content, real models, real homes, whatever it is, where that actually becomes a kind of competitive or positioning advantage in terms of developing that kind of credibility and brand trust with the consumer. I thought that was an interesting kind of contrarian way to think about it, rather than being all in on.
Hello? No? Oh, we're back. I 1000% agree. Like, and I think you need to do both. You need real content and AI-driven content. I actually think Adam Azari, who runs Instagram, I believe was him, he came out and said content that uses real voice of a human versus sort of like the automated, auto-generated voice, that the Instagram algorithm is going to favor that content, right? So that's like a very small baby early signal that like actually the algos might favor real content. So if you follow the logic of like, to just build on a meta point, like Mark Zuckerberg's been like, he wants to put all the agencies out of business for the most part, right? He's like, I foresee a future where a brand comes to our platform, they tell me how much they want to sell stuff, at what cost, they upload a couple of their core assets, and we do it all for them, right? Like that is granted across their 20 million advertisers. But if everybody is functioning that capacity, right, and that becomes the least common denominator for the way you're going to run your executions across social, then where do you naturally go? You have to produce the next level of content above that to be truly differentiated, which might be real people or something else, right? So I think it's always going to be a blend. But the worst thing you could do right now is go all in on one or the other, you know? And we're in a world where the creator economy is absurdly strong. In some ways, the platforms need the creators right now because they produce such a high volume of really great content, which keeps consumers on the platform. I don't think any of the platforms are going to go and piss off the 20, 30 million creators who make content for them every single day. So it's going to have to be a balance of real life humans and then AI generated content, most likely.
Amazing. Well, with that, and maybe because I'm 4 minutes late for a client call, we're gonna wrap things up there. But I think food for thought, like I said, VaynerMedia.com/reports if you want that full presentation. I'm sure we're all open to jamming more on this topic if anyone's interested. But thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.